You don't understand how lonely it is not as an entrepreneur or as an online service-based business. You need that support. You need that feedback. You need those friendships where you can go to things with people.
Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Happy Wednesday, friends. Welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name's April Seifert and I'm your host. I am so excited because this week you get to meet a friend of mine. I'm so pumped. This week you are going to meet Ms. Jenna Redfield. She is a social media marketing expert, and she runs the incredible local Twin Cities group called Twin Cities Collective. It is a group for bloggers and creatives and makers and small businesses. It's a place for people who are sort of out there doing the do, making their thing, building their business. It's a place where all of those folks can come and be in a community. And by community, she literally means it. She doesn't mean online people who just sort of passively comment on each other's stuff. She means like a community where people actually physically come to things and talk to each other face to face, share their struggles, learn from each other and really connect as friends and as people. And it's so neat to see what she's built. So today I'm so pumped that you get to talk or that you get to hear from Jenna, and she's going to talk a lot about, her journey as an entrepreneur, how she came to be the leader of Twin Cities Collective. Totally bold move on her part. And then we're going to talk about kind of the changing landscape of social media and how that's playing a role in people's lives and especially in their businesses today. So I'm so thrilled for you to meet Jenna Redfield. She is just an amazing human being and such an incredible businesswoman and such a big expert in this area. So let's hear that interview. Ms. Jenna, I am so excited that you're joining me for this episode of the podcast. This is going to be a ton of fun. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So it's really fun to have a fellow podcaster on the podcast because there's so many things that I'm like, oh yeah, you know how that goes. Oh yeah, you know how we're going to do this. So this will be a ton of fun. So help my audience get to know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and just a little snippet of the work that you're doing today.
For sure. So my name is Jenna Redfield, and I am a bunch of things. I run a local group called Twin Cities Collective, which I've been doing for about 2.5 years. In this group, we do workshops and events. I also run a podcast, as April mentioned, and then I do a lot of consulting specifically on social media and more specifically Instagram, how to grow your account, how to get better photos, and just grow your online or in-person business.
That's awesome. So super relevant stuff because I feel like podcasting is becoming much more commonplace and popular. I don't know what the stats are for how many podcasts there are out there these days, but it's a lot and growing. Instagram is definitely gaining a lot of steam, especially more recently with all the Facebook blah blah that's been going on, even though Facebook owns them still. Mentally, there's that image of Instagram. And then, I think we're going to get a lot into some of the more creative pieces of the work that you do, because I think there's a really big desire that people have about needing a creative outlet. So I think that'll be a lot of fun to get into.
For sure. There's so much.
Totally. So before we jump into that, tell us a little bit more about Twin Cities Collective. And in particular, there's an interesting origin story there about how you came to be the leader of that group. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, I started blogging right out of college, which was in 2014, and I majored in communications. So I was really into that kind of stuff to begin with. And I was like, I need to start a blog. But it was 2 years into blogging that I actually found a local blogging group called Minnesota Bloggers. And then I later on found another one called Twin Cities Blogger Collective. They both started and I was part of them. I'd gone to a few events of both of theirs. And then the girl that started Twin Cities Blogger Collective announced on Facebook that she was moving away. And both groups had been completely dead for like 6 months. Like no one was posting in them. Like there wasn't any events happening. And so I go, oh my gosh, well, like I feel like I would be better at running this than anyone else just because I'm so passionate about the local community. And I just really felt like it was like the right step for me with my blog and I had started a business at that point. And so I just reached out to the girl that started it and I said, hey, would you mind if I took over the group because you're not really doing anything with it? And she said, sure, I don't need this group. I'm leaving town. So she gave me the admin access to the Facebook group and the Instagram. And then with the other Minnesota bloggers group, I also saw it was dead. And so I actually went and looked to see who the admins were, just because I'm like, well, maybe I could take over this group also and just kind of, merge them together. And so I look and see who the admins were. And turns out one of the admins was my first cousin, Melissa, which is like the craziest story ever. So like I reached out to her and I said, hey, and she had moved to Seattle at this point. So she wasn't even living in Minnesota. And I said, how are you the admin of this group? What's going on with this group? And she said, hey, like, I don't really know. If you want to take it over, you can. So what I did was I just merged the two groups together and we became Twin Cities Collective.
That is such a bold move. I mean,
yeah,
I think about some of the groups that I've been a part of on Facebook and other platforms, and that is not something that I would ever think of doing. Like, I'm like, what are you thinking? Where did that come from? Like, where did the guts come from to just contact them and be like, I think I would be really good at this, and I think you should give me your group?
Well, it wasn't, I don't know if it was that I thought I'd be good at it. I just wanted it to run itself. Like I wanted to be part of something, but it wasn't active. So I was like, well, I feel like at this point, I feel like I'm the only one that's willing to step up. And I think that I'd always wanted to start some sort of like local directory of bloggers or something, just because I was like, there's so many of us and we don't know each other. A huge part of Twin Cities Collective for me is the community aspect. And so for me, I was like, you know what, if I have to do what it takes to become that leader, I'll do it because I want to be part of that as well. So it's kind of like that push and pull of like I don't think I'm prepared for this. And even when I first started, I actually launched like a committee because I was like, I'm not going to do this by myself. And I learned over time, it's like I was way more passionate about this than anyone even on the committee. So that kind of fell flat. So I learned over time, it's like, no, this has to be up to me. I have to be the leader here. And I have to be the one giving directions, and I'll take on help as I go. But it's like, I really have to know what I want with the group and not just listen to all these outside voices telling me what I should do. I need to have that decision-making power. And that was something that it was kind of a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really cool that you've got this group that you can see there's a huge need for it, that people want to connect and they want to connect over things that they're passionate about, but not everybody wants to do the work that you're putting in. Did you realize at the beginning how big of an investment this was going to be?
No. I never, ever, ever saw it as a business ever until about 2 years in, which is really funny. Like I was doing it as a hobby, as a passion project. And it wasn't until we hit about 10,000 followers on Instagram that I'm like, oh, like this is what I spend all of my time doing. Why not turn it into a business? And so it took a while, but I just kept growing it without really knowing why. I just felt like I just wanted to connect as many people as I could to the group and build my network, build everyone else's network. And I just knew it was a good thing for the community. But it wasn't until we hit about 10,000 followers on Instagram that I'm like, oh, I need to take this seriously. There's a lot of potential here for a business. And so that's really kind of when that happened, and that mindset switch kind of happened in my brain.
And where were you at that point? So you hit that. That's kind of like the mark on Instagram, right? Like you hit 10K and like that's a really big deal for people. Did you have a job at that point? What were you doing like lifestyle wise?
So I guess like a couple months before that was when we launched our first workshops. That was the first time I'd ever charged for anything in Twin Cities Collective. Everything had always been free. And when I launched our first Instagram workshop, I was like, you know what? I need to charge for this because it's valuable information and I need to start, making money from I spent a lot of time and money on the collective, growing it, and just a lot of time especially. And so I hit 10,000 in about April of last year. I remember I was in Milwaukee at a women's conference and I was so excited. I was like counting down. I remember I was looking at my phone every like hour being like, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Because right when you hit 10,000, it automatically adds the swipe up feature to your stories. And that's why a lot of people want to hit 10,000. So when I hit that, I was so excited. I posted about it. It was just like, I think it was just a huge celebration. Because if you think about it, that's 10,000 people in the community that are following. So it's like not just like a number, it's just like that's the number of people that have seen my account and are like part of this journey with me, which was like insane because I've never met that many people in my life. So it's like there's so many people out there in our group that I still haven't met in person.
And so a word that you keep using that I want to dive into a little bit is this word community. It really is, when I look at the work that you do and the heart that you put into it, especially into the in-person events that you do, community really is something that's important to you. Can you talk a little bit about the role that has played within Twin Cities Collective? Because there's a lot of Facebook groups out there that don't have what you have.
Well, what I learned, I've been in a lot of Facebook groups as well, and I feel like there is a community in those, but there's a difference between an online community and an offline community. Being able to actually see people in person, to me, I'm an empath, which basically means I am a very empathetic person, but I also can feed off of the energies of people around me. And so what I realized with myself was like, I would rather have people in person than just always do Skype calls and never actually meet people that I meet online. So how can I do that in my own city? So when I was building Twin Cities Collective, I really focused on getting an online community also to be meeting offline. That's why we do workshops. That's why we do, coffee chats and brunches and happy hours, because I'm like, you don't understand how lonely it is not as an entrepreneur or as an online service-based business. You need that support. You need that feedback. You need those friendships where you can go to things with people. And I think that honestly, I've had lots of different jobs in the past, and it's like a lot of them are I've had all the jobs I've had, I've been the only person working there. It's really weird. I've had very like lonely jobs. And so for me, being around people gives me so much energy. And I know it does for a lot of people. And people struggle with finding good quality friendships, good quality networks. So for me, I kind of took that onto myself as being like, I can help people find better relationships for not only for themselves, but also for their business. So that's just been like something that's kept me going through this, running this company, is like, I want that to be my main mission, is helping people find the right people to connect with.
I love that. And what I love about it too is that, you mentioned it in the context of being an entrepreneur, but also I would say when I think about the folks who follow you and who participate in Twin Cities Collective, it's some people who have extremely successful blogs and online businesses who that 100% is their full-time job. They're making a great income, like that's their role, down to the person who is just really passionate about their blog. That's more of a hobby. Maybe their following isn't massive, but it's something they love to do. What those two things have in common is that you're doing something that's outside of the norm. It's becoming more popular to have blogs, and I'd love to dive into that in a minute. But it can be hard to have, say, your friends and family who aren't doing those things. It's hard for them to relate to some of the struggles you have. And like, I think about people who are on more of the side of having their blog be a hobby. That's like doubly difficult because it's something you deeply care about, something that is deeply important to you. And when struggles come up with it and something happens with a post or with technology, or you hit a mental block, or like any barrier comes up, it's so hard and it's so frustrating. And it's worse when people don't they can't understand why it's such a big deal, or they can't understand the struggle you're going through. So that community is huge because it's like-minded people who get why those struggles are so hard and can empathize with what you're going through.
For sure. I think that that is so true. I think the relating to others is something that a lot of people had never found before they found my group, because I think there's a lot of people that join our group in the Twin Cities and think they're the only person like doing what they're doing in the entire state. And then they join our group and they're like, oh my goodness, there are so many other people doing this also. And so they get really excited because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel as alone anymore. I don't feel like people are looking at me like I'm an alien, you know? And I always felt like that when I was in college. I went to school for communications, but by the time I graduated, I was like, I really do want to do social media, but the schools and the college hadn't caught up to the teachings that, about social media. Like, they didn't have a social media program, even though social media had been around for a few years. I didn't take a single class on social media in college, even though I was a communications major. So it was like me having to do it on my own and learn my own things. And that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am.
That's a great place to take this next, because I use Facebook, I use Instagram. I would not say that I have any kind of expertise whatsoever in anything social media. And to go from being a casual user of those platforms to building something that you've built and intimately understanding how they work, both from like a functionality and algorithm perspective to more of the, I don't know what the right word is, maybe the culture of each of those platforms and the unspoken rules and that type of thing. That's an amazing amount of information that, like you said, you did not get in school. Like, how did you come to be the expert that you are and get yourself to this point where you intimately know those platforms?
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of it is experience, just trying things out. There's not a lot of things to read or watch. I mean, I've never taken my own course on Instagram. I just learned it through trial and error, through looking at other people's accounts and seeing what they're doing, just being aware. I'm very good at consuming. I know that sounds like a weird word, but I am very, very good at learning something and absorbing it and keeping it in my brain. I feel like I tend to be an extreme consumer where I watch a lot of videos, I read a lot of blog posts, and then I'm able to figure out how do I then tell that to other people in kind of a narrowed down list, including examples of things that I myself have done. I'm a very visually minded person, so Instagram for me has been a great platform because for me, one of my first online businesses was stock photography. So basically creating photos of office products and computers and stuff that people could use on their social media. And that really, going into that, I was not an expert. And then over time learned what not to do, what to do, invested in things. I think it takes time. And I think that's the part that people struggle with is they don't have the time. They just want to learn it right now. And my advice is you got to be a little bit more patient because it's going to come to you eventually, but it's not going to be overnight learning everything. So I guess the answer to your question of how did I learn things is I've spent the last 5 years learning everything, from learning how to use WordPress, blogging, Instagram. I went to school for video production, so that was really what I spent a lot of my teen years teaching myself how to edit videos. So a lot of it has just been a lot of time spent learning and figuring things out. Even with starting my own podcast, I did read some blog posts like how do I set up, what host I should use and all those things. I just read a lot. I Googled, Google is my friend, and I just kind of, piecemealed it. Again, I started with no budget. With everything I launch, I never put any money into it. I spend a lot of time researching, and then when I launch something, it's good to go because I've spent so much of my time figuring it out and not having to spend thousands of dollars.
And something, that I think is inherent in figuring things out for yourself is, you know, you were talking about when you first got onto Instagram or whatever, you were trying things out, right? You were experimenting with the platform and trying things. And that just for better or worse, what comes along with that is that you're going to try some things that don't work, or you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to put something out there that totally flops. Tell me about that side of it, because there's the glossy stock photography side of things where everything looks perfect, and then there's reality.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, I've definitely had some things that haven't worked. But it's hard because I do think perception is something I do value. I want people to perceive me in a certain way. So when something does fail, it is hard for me to do that. But then you kind of just have to say, like, you know what, this didn't work and this is why. And I think people do take you more seriously when you do talk about your failures than having everything be perfect all the time. So one of the things we launched this year was a membership, and over even a month after we launched it, I go, this isn't good. This isn't what I want. This is not what I like. I thought it was going to be one thing and it's not. And I had people like sign up for an entire year, and I ended up having to refund a lot of people because I closed it because I was like, I can't do this. And I didn't expect that to happen. I put so much time and energy into the launch that when it actually became a thing, it wasn't what I wanted. And so I've learned a lot from that is like, you know, what I've learned about that is I don't like to plan more than 3 months ahead because things change so quickly for me. Like, you know, I might, you know, try something new or get a new idea. If I plan a year in advance, it's not a good thing. And I've seen that happen with other entrepreneurs is sometimes they plan out a year in advance and things quickly change and they're screwed because they're like, I had this already planned out. And it's the internet goes so quickly that you can't really plan that far in advance. So that's one of the biggest lessons I learned last year was not to plan that far in advance because of how fast things change in the online world.
And so that's actually an interesting segue because I feel like things are changing right now. I mean, you can feel a shift between platforms, and I kind of alluded to that before. Like you can see people, I mean, there's like stuff everywhere about people deleting their Facebook account, and everyone makes it like a big to-do when they do that, which is also kind of funny, right? I don't want to be on social media so everyone sees me, but then I'm going to make a big deal about how I deleted my account. But social media, I feel like, you know, the role that it plays in our lives has ebbed and flowed. And from somebody who's on your side of the fence, somebody who maybe sees it more holistically than the rest of us do, what are some of those, I guess, trends, or what are some of those shifts that you see happening that are more recent that you know, we may be feeling, but we might not be able to articulate or see as clearly?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying with Facebook. I do think it's a generational thing. The younger crowd isn't really joining Facebook, but I feel like my thought is they will after they graduate college or graduate high school, because I think that they will want to keep in touch with people. But when they're in high school right now, they can just use Snapchat and Instagram to keep up with people. But I think once they get a little older, they'll join Facebook. So I think there'll be like a resurgence of Facebook for the current younger generation. But I do see that stories are huge right now, especially on Instagram. And I think that's kind of the way that it's going to go is people want to see what people are actually doing every day. And I think people's attention spans have got really, really short. You know, 15 seconds at a story is the length of it. I think people are wanting to feel that connection to someone and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I think the polished look of Instagrams is like still a thing, but I think that people want those captions that are super, super relatable and super open and vulnerable. I think 5 to 10 years ago, it was very, very superficial. And I think that the vulnerability and authenticity movement is really, really here right now. And I think that's really the future of social media, because I think the older generations, I hate to say it, they're dying out. And I think moving forward, everyone that's under the age of 20 right now has always had social media. And so I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to eventually become so ingrained in our society that it's like a no-brainer to be on there. And I think that especially if you're a business, you have to be on social media because it's not only the cheapest way to promote your business, but if you're not on Instagram, you don't exist. Because it's like, I just don't see you as an actual business if you're not where everyone already currently is. So I guess that's my answer is I think that the world is changing. And I think that social media is going to change with it. And so you just kind of have to keep up with the trends and what's happening and kind of pay attention to what you think. I always look to the future and see, okay, well, what's going to happen? And you can't always predict it, but you can kind of see trends coming.
So you mentioned the importance of being on social media. And in particular, I think this is interesting for your crowd, right? So you, Twin Cities Collective, began as like bloggers and creatives, but you've expanded it to be for small business owners as well. And that's really, it's an interesting intersection. Everybody thinks about like large businesses being on social media and like pushing a lot of money into paid ads and that type of thing, remarketing and blah, blah, blah. But for small businesses, talk about the potential impact of being on social media and of marketing yourself really well. Because to me, social media kind of levels the playing field a little bit.
I totally think that's why I focus on small businesses is because there's so much potential. When you have a good idea or you have good people behind your business, social media allows you to be super creative. It allows you to connect directly with your customer. Like I was just thinking about like the Super Bowl ads. I'm just like, I don't know how long those will continue because like even they showed like less and less people are watching the Super Bowl. People will get more if you want to spend $5 million on ads. Like there's so many better ways to get directly to your prime customer than to just pay for traditional advertising. And I think that small businesses, you can pay right now for ads on Facebook for like $100 and reach thousands of people. So I think that social media, if it's done right, can completely transform businesses. I've seen it happen with so many of the people in our group that use social media really well, where they only post about an event on Instagram and like 50 to 100 people show up. Like that's the only platform that they posted on. And yet they can get hundreds of people showing up. I went to a event at the Hutton House in Minnesota, and my friend was putting it on and it went viral on Facebook, and there was like 15,000 people that showed up. Like it was insane. Like they had to close it because there were so many people. Like that was without any paid marketing. That was with just putting up a Facebook event. Like I think it was like 9 or 10 months before the event they posted it. And so like over time, people are just like, let's go to that at Christmas time. And now they're actually turning it into multi-day event because so many people are interested, and it just kind of got out of control in terms of how many people showed up. And so I was there. I had never been to an event with so many people that like it was a free event. And so stuff like that, like you hear those stories about things, and going viral is not something that happens to everyone, and it's not really the goal. But when it does happen, you have to be prepared. You have to have some sort of plan for an event or for selling a product. For example, like Shark Tank. When people go out there, they know that there's going to be thousands of orders that day. So I think just being prepared and knowing, what, if I do promote this and it does go viral, what's my backup plan? What am I going to be able to do? Will I be able to hire people to help me? Just looking at like the best and worst case scenarios, I think really help you prepare for what happens when you launch a campaign of some sort. So I think there's a lot of ways we could go with this, but that's really what I recommend is just knowing what's the potential, what could and could not happen, and just being prepared and having backup plans for things.
All good, amazing tips, because I can't imagine how they must have felt at, Hutton House, if you're in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and you've even like seen this venue online, it is so not equipped for 15,000 people. No. That is not what you would expect to show up there. No. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was
That's
insane.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned something that was really interesting. You were saying social media is powerful if it's done well. And I think we can all imagine times when it has not been done well. Can you give me some examples of like both sides of the coin? So what does it look like when social media is done extremely well? And what does it look like when that's super not the case and it is not done well?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of examples of like fails when like a company tweets something and it, is, misspelled or something. There's lots of things like that where people get fired because they said something. But like one of the things I love on Twitter, I don't really use Twitter for business anymore just because Instagram is my main platform, and I'm finding a lot of creatives are leaving Twitter because it's just kind of become very political, and it's a harder place to promote business stuff. But I love the fact that like Wendy's and McDonald's and all of these like fast food companies, they are really good at their Twitter game because they just like do all these funny things and use memes and just they're really up with pop culture. So I think that's like a really great way to use social media from like a bigger business standpoint. But then there's smaller businesses that I've seen even in the Twin Cities, I'll give an example of Still Kickin'. They are a clothing company that like a lot of their proceeds go towards cancer, people who are going through cancer treatments, and they are a clothing company. So they've really got they have these shirts that just say Still Kickin' on them. And they've gone really viral just by having other people in the Twin Cities wear their shirts, doing pop-up shops. Just getting the awareness out. And I think they have over 20,000 followers. And so they are just using social media only as their only source of advertising beyond maybe local in-person stuff. That's a great way to promote like a clothing brand or even like podcasts or people that are using things like podcasts. To me, the only way you can promote them is through social media because no one's going to advertise a podcast on a billboard or on a radio ad. It's got to be through social media. And I think podcasting is great because it's already mobile friendly on your phone. So I think that there's a lot of really great ways to use it. Some negative ways, I think, I'm trying to think of some examples, but there's definitely been some fails that I've seen, like having like a college student use your social media. I always kind of rule against that because they don't know the negative impact that going viral in a bad way can have, and it can ruin your business. I haven't really seen it locally where someone completely ruined their business through social, but there's definitely been some negative posts that have gone viral in certain ways that I think is just not great.
Yeah. Something I want to go back to, this is a little bit of a left turn, but it's something I want to touch on because it's another trend that I'm seeing that is interesting. So your group, you mentioned your group is growing and it's a very large group. And what's interesting about that is it's a very large group full of people who are doing a creative endeavor. It's people who are photographers, it's people who make things, it's people who blog in a variety of different ways. And that in and of itself, this creative outlet of writing and making things and even like jewelry design and photography and all of that at anywhere from a very amateur, I do this because I just enjoy it and that is literally what it's going to be. It's going to be a hobby, up to people who fully intend to go all in and create a business. It's becoming more commonplace. And, in my perspective, I see this as like a general need that people have to want to express themselves creatively. I don't know if there's something that you've learned, though, from being in this group of people. Like, what does that give people? Like, that creative outlet, what is it about that? Like, what does it do for people that it seems to it's becoming so much more commonplace?
Yeah, I think the internet has allowed people to do what they like to do and actually be able to make money with it. I think, and that it shouldn't be about the money, but the fact that I think especially, I was thinking about this the other day with women, and I know a lot of women listen to your podcast. Women were never able to work from home, ever, until the internet. Unless you, I just can't think of a business where you could run it from home. you have your kids at home. You can really actually like sell products on Etsy. You can, be an expert on something and sell your consulting services from home. You can, be an artist and show off your work on Instagram. There's so many more ways to get eyes on yourself with social media that has never, ever, ever been able to be done before, ever. Only the people that were famous were the ones that had their own TV shows, the people that were in magazines. Even celebrities are now on Instagram, and they're killing it just because they're already well known. But it's the ones who can literally start with zero. Everyone starts with zero. That's why I always say everyone starts with 0 followers, and it's up to you to grow that to however you want. It's up to you. It really is, because if you're appealing to your audience and you're using social media to grow, and you're, learning how to do it right, and you're actually building an audience, there's no limit to how big you can get. There is no limit for your success. And I think that has been a really freeing experience to anyone who has an interest in something. There's so many really, really small niches in our group where, like, say they're really into, antique car or something. Like, you can literally build an entire brand around something like that, where you find other people that are interested in it as well, that are maybe from all across the country. And I think that being able to have everyone connected on the internet, like, we don't think I was actually born the week that the internet came out, like literally that week the www.com like launched. So I literally like have been around since the internet started. And so I've never lived in a world where like we haven't all been connected to each other. And I think my generation doesn't realize how important that is, because there has been so many times where you literally can't reach someone. There was no cell phones, there was no internet, and now we literally can connect to any person on the planet and actually talk to them, Skype with them, email them. And I think that we forget how monumental that is in how the world works. So I think that's really what has changed in the last 25 years, is we are able to connect on a global scale instantly and be able to sell products, show off what we do, and really do whatever we want and find people that are willing to pay for it. It's insane if you think about it.
Yeah, it just opens up so many more avenues and so many different directions that people can go in order to either express creativity or get time back in their life. I was literally talking about this with, actually, this is a total collision of everything that you were just saying. I've done 2 interviews today, and the interview that I did this morning, I was chatting with a woman in Singapore, and we were talking about how 9 to 5 jobs are starting to invade people's other time in their life and whatever. And this is hysterical, because here we are talking about how the internet connects everybody. And I literally just talked to somebody in Singapore this morning. I mean, it's just wild that something as simple as this podcast, in a lot of ways, would not have been possible. Like, I would have had to fly places, or like, I don't know how I would have done it in the past. And now it's just, comparatively, it's so easy. It's not easy.
It's easy to find. People can find your podcast anywhere too. It's like your audience can be. I mean, mine is local just because I've purposefully done that, and that's what I like. It's almost like too overwhelming to think about the whole world. So that's why I'm like really focused on local. Is like this. I feel like I can control a little bit more, because there is only so many people that live in Minnesota, and for me, it's like, if I wanted to expand, people are like, you should go and do it in another city. And I'm like, well, no, because I don't live in those cities and I don't understand those cities. If people want to start something similar to what I'm doing in another city, that's great. But I don't know those cities. I'm really just focusing on what I know, and that's the Minneapolis area. So I think it's like, you have to figure out what, who are you reaching? Are you reaching the whole world? And I feel like with your podcast, you are, because anyone can discover this podcast on iTunes or whatever. And I think that's really powerful, that we're all so interconnected. And yeah, people can, I've had clients, I think I have one in Singapore. I've had ones in, England and stuff. So it's really, really awesome like that.
Totally agree. Okay. So This has been amazing. We haven't even tapped into, and we won't even have time to tap into this wealth of knowledge that you have, just practical knowledge and tangible knowledge that, people could use to market their own products and services on Instagram and grow their own following and this whole creative side of the work that you do. For people who are interested in either joining Twin Cities Collective or getting to know you or looking over your products, if you want to start a podcast, oh my God, go to Jenna Redfield. She has a program that will show you how to start a podcast. Like all this stuff, she has taken her genius and her ability to absorb all this information, like she said, and create a system and create a checklist, essentially, that you can follow to do the same thing she did without having to go through all the time and the crazy of integrating all that information. She's got it for you. So for people who are interested in that, where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you're not in the Twin Cities and you still want to take my online workshops, you can. If you go to twincitiescollective.com, click on online workshops. We have one that has Instagram growth, and then we have one for do-it-yourself podcasts. They're both available on our website. If you are in the Twin Cities and want to come to some of our events, everything is also on the website, but you really want to join our Facebook group because that's where I post a lot about stuff that's happening. If you go to facebook.com/groups/Twin Cities Collective, you can join us there, and I hope to see you.
This is awesome. I'm so excited that we could connect. Total bit of like behind the curtain information. I did an amazing mastermind last year with Yasna Bursa. She was a previous guest of mine on the podcast, and I met Jenna through that mastermind. So that just goes to tell you, like, reach out, do scary things, join groups of people who are doing similar scary things to you, because amazing things can happen, and Twin Cities Collective is one of those groups. So
yes. That was great. I'm so glad I met you with that.
I know. It's so good. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful. Like I said, you have an incredible amount of expertise that I hope people tap into, but it was just great to hear a little bit about your backstory and how you came to be doing this amazing set of work that you're doing. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Isn't she awesome? I mean, she's just awesome. I'm so excited that you guys got to meet Jenna Redfield, an amazing friend and an incredible expert in her field. And as always, I have a few things that I want to plug from this episode. Number one, I want to highlight the really bold move that Jenna made when, she saw that the person who was leading this group before her kind of vacated the area and the group was just kind of left stagnant. And she wanted the community that came from that group and wanted to continue to connect with people. And so she stepped up, and not only stepped up to say, okay, I'm going to just sort of create my own thing, but stepped up to make the bold move to say, what we have here could be very special. I really feel like I'm the right person to lead it. I'm great at this. I have, the ability to build this into something even greater than it already has been. And so I'm going to make the bold move and ask to take the group over. I mean, that's awesome. I think about how many times we have an idea or there's something that we want to try or do, and we don't do it because it just feels too big or too bold. And the thing is, you just never know unless you ask. Like, you just don't know. I mean, the worst that could have happened is that person could have said, nah, that's okay. And Jenna would have said, oh, okay, cool. And she probably would have started her own group. It probably would be wildly successful. But there was already these groups of people who desperately wanted connection and wanted to have that community of other like-minded people. And she did the bold move, asked to take it over, and then put herself in a position of leadership within those groups to make it continue on and be this community and this resource for the folks who were already in those groups. So I think that's really cool. And I think what I'm taking away from that is, what bold moves am I not making? What asks am I not making? What sort of leaps am I not taking that could result in something so cool and so special like it did for Jenna in Twin Cities Collective? Second, we talked so much about community within this group, and I agree with Jenna. That's something that I think we crave more and more, both as our lives become more connected in a technology standpoint, like as more of our lives move online, we still need that human interaction or that human connection. But also, too, I mean, I've found that as I get older, I want that connection to other people, and it gets harder and harder, as Jenna mentioned, harder and harder to find people who are doing similar things to me and who understand the struggle of having, a podcast that is not my career, that really is just a passion project and a hobby for me for the most part. Why it does get stressful sometimes when I'm trying to book people or when my schedule gets busy and sure, it's not my family's livelihood on the line, but at the same time, it's intensely important to me. And it's something that, I want to see be as good as it possibly could be. And so, I definitely crave that connection to people. And I just adore that Jenna is, fostering a community that allows for that. And that she's spent so much time thinking about how do we get these people in front of one another so they can actually meet each other and connect in that way. I think that's so cool. And the last thing that I want to highlight, Jenna did not go to school for social media. Jenna went to school for communication in a program that didn't have anything to do with social media. It wasn't a thing at the time. Yet, she is a giant expert in this field. She can teach you so much about how to market your company and market yourself and create your own personal brand on social media. The woman has some mad skills, and you can go look at her social media accounts as proof of it. And she learned it all on her own from Google and trial and error and just, making a commitment to figuring it out. And that's so neat because we talked about technology and so much of our lives moving online and all of that. But the amazing byproduct of all of that and of the internet is that literally any piece of information you could possibly want is in front of you at any point in time. You carry a big internet searching machine around in your pocket all the time in the form of your phone. And it's just amazing that we have access to all of this, yet sometimes we feel like we don't know where to get information. And what I loved about Jenna's, story is that she just had this commitment to direct her own learning, to self-directed learning. She decided that it was something she wanted to learn and become an expert in. And so she came at it from multiple directions. She, did some courses she mentioned she didn't even do a course. That's right. She didn't even do a course. She, did her own trial and error on these platforms and then, did some Google searching. And from that, she's developed this framework and this set of skills that she's using to grow her own accounts and grow the accounts of her clients and show them how to do the same thing. So, she made the comment about how if you're not on Instagram, you don't exist at all, and social media or small businesses need to be using social media. Totally agree with that. It's where we're connecting more and more, for better or worse. People can say what they want about sort of the backlash with social media right now, but it is an incredible tool to reach, as Jenna mentioned, anybody in the world. And I just think it's a really neat platform. And so if that's something that you're interested in, commit yourself that that's going to be the thing that you're going to learn, and you're going to direct your own learning and you're going to figure it out. And if you need help in that department, you know who to call, because Jenna is incredible. She is just really great and also very, very generous with her time and with her knowledge. So it was just really wonderful to have her here today. I know I could stand to learn a ton from her, by the way, on my social media. I hope you guys really enjoyed this interview. There was so much in it around, social media, sure, but just the importance of finding a creative outlet and finding a way to express yourself in that way, even if it's just a hobby. This podcast, I can't tell you how much I've grown as a person and how much I've gotten out of it simply by having this crazy hobby for the last couple of years. It's been just fun. So whatever big leap you guys want to take, I encourage you to take it. Take a page out of Jenna's book and just rip the Band-Aid and go do it, because you never know what amazing thing is going to come out of it. All right, you guys, I hope you had an amazing few days of this week so far. I hope the rest of the week closes out great, and I will be back next week with another incredible interview. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.